And today I want to talk about something very, very serious, okay? I want to talk about toxic traits of SRNAs that you need to avoid while in school. So let's get into it. So the first thing that I want to talk about, and this is very, very self-explanatory, procrastination. There's no room for it. I mean, none at all. And you're still gonna do it. You're still gonna do it, but you need to recognize that it can be very, very, very detrimental, because the worst thing you can do is fall behind on information. I mean, you're essentially already behind when the information is released. So for you to sleep on it even more is like the worst thing that you can possibly do. And there's no excuse. I was in the hospital. My grandma got sick. My heart goes out to her. My heart goes out to you if you were in the hospital, but you still are responsible for the information. And that's not to say that like your faculty or your professors won't be have concerning feelings, but at the end of the day, you still need to find a way to get that stuff done. So I mean, if you have those situations, the earlier you talk about something or you mention it to them, the better, because that might be more options for you. But if you wait, there's essentially nothing that can be done. So you have to either speak up early or just don't procrastinate and get it done. So that's like first and foremost. Now next, and I'm a little hyped because I've been waiting to talk about this video. The competition is over. Let me say it again. The competition is over. Let it go. You are not in competition anymore to get into school, okay? At this point, you need to be trying to survive and channel on each other to get through school. Really try your best not to compare your progress and yourself, particularly your grades, to any of your classmates, because one, and probably the biggest thing, that's going to destroy your confidence completely, because you have to go from recognizing or feeling like you were this very smart ICU nurse, which you were, to realizing that now you're in a room with 30 to 40 extra smart ICU nurses as well. You're not the smartest person in the room. You're not. And you have to take note of that. You have to understand that. You have to process that. And if you don't, and if you're still trying to compare yourself and, talk about your grades versus somebody else's grades, it's really going to weigh you down mentally. And the sooner you let that go, the better it is for you. Another thing, and this is I'm going to apply this to me. It might apply to you. It might not apply to you. But going down the rabbit hole of why, and I'm going to tell you what I mean. So I'm going to give you an example of what I mean by that. So let's say you're in class and the professor says 1 + 1 = 2. And you say, you know what? That makes sense. That does make sense. 1 + 1 does equal 2. And you say, wait a minute. Why does 1 + 1 = 2? Okay, cool. That's very understandable. You got to know the why. Professor says 1 + 1 = 2 because if you look in chapter 66, it states the law of arithmetic says that 1 + 1 is going to equal 2. Boom. Okay, whatever the explanation is. That's your first answer to your first why. And you say, okay, that makes sense. But why does the law of arithmetic state that? Okay, now you're on your second round of why now, okay? Okay, professor says, good question. Well, all the research and the literature from years and years of research shows that there's a pattern that confirms that 1 + 1 = 2. And you say, okay, the research says 1 + 1 = 2. Okay, and then they put it in the book that 1 + 1 = 2. But why does the research show that 1 + 1 = 2? Now, at that point, you're slipping down a rabbit hole. And we have this saying in my school: just drink the Kool-Aid. Just drink the Kool-Aid. Because if you are getting, okay, so your professor's going to give you the information. You look in the book, and we're talking about heavy hitter books: Miller, Morgan and McHale, Barrage. We're talking about the heavy hitters. And they give you an explanation in the book that is very profound, and you still want to know the why. You might just have to drink the Kool-Aid on that, because, in my opinion, and this is just me, because now you're going to go into a rabbit hole of why. And for me, I know the more I go down that rabbit hole, the more confusing it's going to get. And sometimes you just need to understand what is what and leave it at that. Now, if you're a person that has to know the why to everything, that might not be a problem for you. And, but for me, I can't do that. That was a toxic trait that I was like, I can't keep going down this rabbit hole. You got about 2 rounds of why out of me, and that's on a really good day. And then I got to drink the Kool-Aid. After round 3 of why, I can't do it anymore. So take that for what you will. I just know that for me, 2 rounds of why, and then I'm going to let it fly. Now, the next thing that I'm going to talk about is kind of serious. Learn to help each other. Learn to share with each other. And when I say share, I mean when I have a brilliant idea about something, or when I have an understanding about something, don't hold on to that because you want to be the smartest person in the class. Like, give out information that may be helpful and beneficial to others, and the same thing will happen for you. Me coming up with the idea to help make questions, I could easily be like, oh, this is going to make my grades go up, and for the other people who aren't doing as well, they should have did what I did. Like, that's not helpful, and that's not beneficial to them or to me. And when you become a part of a program and your study group members, you are going to want to help them because you need to get through this together, and you have to have somebody to do it alongside of you. So you withholding information to benefit only you is not good. And if you have that mentality of, I need to make sure that I get myself through this first and try to leave everybody else behind, you're not doing it right. So let me just say that. And try to be resourceful. Try to be resourceful. Even if you aren't the most resourceful person and you don't have a lot of connects, or you don't have a lot of mentors, or you don't talk to a lot of people, and you have someone in your study group that is, and they're sharing those resources with you, try to expound and, make those resources better. Don't just take them and then say, oh, thanks, I'm so glad that you talked to this amount of people, and then have nothing else to contribute, because that gets picked up on easily, and it makes people not want to work with you. So, you don't want to be on an island by yourself. So, just try to make sure that you are contributing to your group efforts as best as you can. Another toxic trait that you need to get rid of is taking things personal. If a professor is calling on you and you get put on the spot because maybe you don't know what the answer is, and they're still waiting for you to answer the question, don't take that personal. You should just take it as, okay, I need to get my stuff together and be ready for class next time. It's not a personal dig on you. If, somebody's mentality in your study group is different from yours, and you have a little bit of a disagreement about it, don't take it personal. Just realize that not everybody is going to think like you, and move forward. You are an ICU nurse who is used to doing things your way, and they are an ICU nurse from probably a whole nother side of the country that's used to doing things their way. You're not always going to agree on everything, but you cannot take it personal and hold that, and then now you don't want to study with that person because of, this disagreement that you had. Like, let it go. Don't take anything personal. That's another trait that you need to get rid of. So yeah, understanding that your way of thinking is not the only way of thinking. That's a big one, because You can't try to convince everybody that your way is better. And the toxic part comes in is when somebody who has a different opinion from you or a different viewpoint from you about a concept, where you both get the same answer, you try to negate the validity of their point of view. And it's the slight digs that, may come into play where, trying to make your point still better than theirs, that's toxic. And, you just have to understand that there's many ways to skin a cat, there's many ways to do anesthesia, there's many ways to get to the right answer, most of the time. And, you have to understand that, and you have to come to terms that, your way is not the only way of thinking. So keep that in mind, because that can be very toxic in a group, especially. Another toxic habit that I would say you should probably ditch is neglecting certain concepts of the exam that's coming up because you feel like either the professor is not going to test on it, or you feel like you have a good understanding of it and you're like, I don't need to study that. Let that go. Like, you really have to get in the mode of studying everything and realize that everything is up for grabs on an exam. Unless the professor specifically says this is not on the exam, you need to be responsible for it. And I know I've been guilty of that, where I'm like, child, they are not going to talk about this. And lo and behold, question 6 on the exam, that's what they talked about. And I'm like trying to really wreck my brain to remember the least bit of information that I can about it because I didn't really study it. That can be toxic because that 1 or 2 questions may make or break you. So you need to make sure that you are covering everything and not trying to guesstimate what will be on the exam, and just study everything that you possibly can. Ooh, this next one is big, and I still haven't mastered how to really let go of this next point, which is changing your answers on your exam, people. I feel like it's something that'll never go away, but like you have to try to limit it, because it can also be very, very detrimental. And what I do when I'm in an exam and I'm thinking about changing my answers, I always think, after an exam is over, I don't think I've ever said, man, I should have changed my answer. I'm always saying, man, I should not have changed my answer. So when it gets to that point and my brain tells me, especially if I read the question correctly, okay, this is under these terms, I read the question correctly, I read the answers thoroughly, and my brain tells me that this is the answer, that's what I'm gonna go with. Because 9 times out of 10, that is the answer. And then when you sit on it and you start to think and add things into the question, now you start to swirl around and think, well, if this is this, then maybe it's this answer. And that's where you get into trouble. Pick it and stick it. And something that really helped me was, because in undergraduate, once we switched to computerized exams, we didn't have the ability to go back. Like, once you answer a question and you click next, that's it. Like, you can't change it again. And I know it can be kind of like intimidating to have that factor in, but it really does help with you not overthinking questions. And that's how it's going to be on boards anyway. So, that's how most programs are structured, or they're going to that structure. So, take the benefits with the downfalls of it and try to make the best out of it. But I think that it really does help with, not changing your answers. Now, there are a couple of times where I'm like, I'm not sure, and I click an answer, and then 3 questions down the line, it kind of gives me the answer that I should have picked 3 answers ago, and I'm like, oh gosh. So, but that just comes with really retaining the information that you study. It's not really a thing of changing your answer. It's just, you just picked the wrong answer that first time. So that's that. And lastly, and I kind of touched on this, another toxic trait is only studying what you think the professor is going to test on. And this happens when you've had the professor for either one test already, or maybe you've had them for a semester or two already. So you kind of feel like you have an idea of how they test, what they look for, what is important to them, and you study according to that understanding. And then you negate so much information, or you neglect to fail to study so much information at one time, that when that information presents itself on the exam, you don't really know it. And now you're stuck in this position of trying to guess your way through an exam because you spent so much time focusing on the things that you thought the professor was going to test on, and that wasn't the case. So you set yourself up and you shoot yourself in the foot by not really addressing all of the information that was testable material. So please try not to do that. And that is something that is going to be trial and error, and you'll probably do it because you have a good idea of how the professor is going to test. And sometimes it does help, but when you get to the point where you're like, I'm not even going to look at the information, it's becoming toxic. So just try to check yourself and balance between what you're going to prioritize when you study versus what you are going to look at, still in depth, but not as high of a priority as some information. So those are some of the toxic traits that I have seen thus far that I am either actively working on or I have kind of obliterated altogether. And I just hope that you can, recognize those things early on and really, keep them at bay. So if you have any other things that you may know, if you're further down in your program, that things that you've seen that needs to be addressed or you should probably get rid of as a toxic trait, put it down in the comments. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. And with that being said, I'm out.